Good evening. Welcome to Defacto Review, our weekly in-depth analysis on the current news and affairs with our commentator and economist, Mr. Jargal Defacto.
Good evening.
And I'm your host, Namser Etsin. You can join in on our conversation on MNB World Facebook page and on Twitter with hashtag Jargal_Defacto. Now let's take a look at today's topics. Was the election held fairly? Results of the parliamentary election 2020. And for our last one, we have a flawed election system. Now let's get into our first topic for today. Mongolia's 8th parliamentary election was held on June 24th, and this year's election was held during a pandemic, which makes Mongolia the second country after South Korea to hold such election amid COVID-19 concerns. Several new standards were set and enforced for election campaign posters, and groups like Uglo Movement encouraged younger people to more actively participate in the election. So our first question on this one is that what would you say some of the highlights were about this parliamentary 2020 election process?
Well, first of all, it is about the system of election. 29 districts or constituencies, each has from 2 to 3 seats, mandates, and because it's, we call it larger circles, it took quite some time for young or new candidates to be known and then to talk about what are they going to do. And for experienced or well-known candidates, it was easier to talk about just what they're going to do. So it was a challenge for less-known candidates, first. And secondly, also because there was a mispropaganda saying that but if done to vote by a team or consisting of 3 candidates from the same party, that the ballot, their vote paper will be invalid. So this kind of propaganda, wrong propaganda was there, so it was not easy election for these new candidates. Secondly, for independent candidates, it was almost no chance. There was only one winner out of independent 121 candidates, and that person was not actually quite independent, as he was the ex-prime minister and ex-head of the second largest political party, Democratic Party in the country, Mr. Altong Hoyak. The third I would highlight, we feel like in 2 countries in the sense of our law system works. Why? Because 6 out of 606 candidates were arrested during this candidacy, the election time, the time of running time, and according to the law of election, they're supposed to have certain immunity. Nobody can have them arrested, and they should have a special permission from the Central Election Committee, which they did not ask. And the court judges find that the election law doesn't work for them, and they arrested 6 of them. So very, very strange feeling that it's like 2 countries, 2 separate laws, not in one country, that's what we were expecting. And most ironically, out of the 6 candidates arrested, 1 is elected. That person is Mr. Erkin, but just a previous prime minister of the country. He was running in the Silingaimak, so he won the election. The question is now, tomorrow when the whole new parliament members will get their permission or certificate and they will give an oath, then where he will be sitting, either in his cell in prison or in the parliament hall. And there is not big difference or distance in between these 2 halls, it looks like.
So election attendance was a major problem in the previous elections, and most importantly, youth were supposed to attend more and more. And this year, many movements were started to encourage the youth, and how effective were these movements, and how many youth actually attended the votes?
Though we don't have final statistics about age of voters, but there is a great deal, I think, of more participants were the young people under 35 years old, as because this election was, because many reasons, it was more social media kind of election, and the young people are very active here, and that's why all candidates were using social media very active, because there is no time or other restrictions there. Thanks God that the government cannot control that part of social media. So the candidates were hiring a lot of young people as assistant to their political campaign, and that's why with the tools they are the people of social media. So they were very active social media, competition, propaganda, agitation in this country. So we have a full basis to say that we have a more youth participated in the election. So in terms of voters, let's see, because some of them were just fully busy with their candidates they are working for, and I'm not sure that if they had the time to go back to their constituency where they are supposed to vote by their address of residence.
So how would you evaluate the overall process of this year's voting?
Well, you know, the vote was, the election was on time, everything organized well, etc., except there's few claims that there's some, in particular, independent candidates were claiming that it was wrong. The black box didn't work well, and in particular, the information from all the centers, ballots, voting points were coming to one server at the General Election Commission, and because they were converting all this synergized information into Excel format to the screen of that night on the night of election. And there were some mistakes and technical mistakes, etc., and there were some commas after thousands, etc. So there were complaints, and the complaints came to the president, who asked them re-account with hand each counts that made by the computer, and which has basically has a little sense. But however, they are completing this recounting with hand tonight, and tomorrow is planned. Looks like 10 o'clock. They officially will receive the certificate of members of the parliament, members of certificate for that. So this, whether we should see the irregularities or not in terms of accounting votes, but whatever it is, the comment, now it will dismiss the doubt about this black box about used during election for last few years in the country.
So, as mentioned before, it was this election was held during the pandemic. So, how do you evaluate the preventative measures taken by the government during the election?
Well, that's the reason why, one of the reasons why the People's Party won substantially. So it played an important role, and there are other factors. For example, the People's Party, who was ruling and who is ruling now, the party, its head, Mr. Hurulsuh, Prime Minister, had played a substantial role to make the air pollution of Ulaanbaatar city better. This is one of the reasons. The other reason is new mayor of the city was combating certain corruption around land speculation of Ulaanbaatar city. He cancelled several licenses using public common lands, which got a lot of supports by the Ulaanbaatar people. And also the ruling party had annulled or taken over 49% of Erdenet shares which is taken by a group of businesses in the country, namely with the head of a trade and development bank, and which have been using public money for their purchase. So, and plus the People's Party were replacing 27 new candidates for the election, and many of them were replacing those who were involved in this corruption scandal around Small Medium Enterprise Support Fund. So this is a major reason why People's Party got the majority. But the second major reason is because the opposition, the main opposition party, Democratic Party, was so weak. That's one of the reasons why that got absolute majority. And Democratic Party was weak because a head of Democratic Party, Erden, was not elected, and they got just only one person from the previous parliament re-elected out of 8 that time. And then the remaining 7 who replaced those were new, but some of them had experiences of being a parliament member before. So it is mostly strong action of the People's Party and weak points of the Democratic Party that made absolute majority for People's Party.
Okay, so thank you for that. Now let's get into our second topic of the results of the election. This election marks the first time in Mongolia's history for a majority party to hold onto the majority for a second term. So our first question on this one is that why did the Mongolian People's Party see another landslide victory?
That's what I tried to explain.
So
it is because they made these actions I have listed, and also because Democratic Party weakness.
So why were the smaller political parties unsuccessful?
That's another question, because it turned out now it depends, the victory of any political party depends on how much they have the root connections with ordinary people. And the People's Party has a serious root, and the Democratic Party relatively, because they have both largest number of members, and plus for incumbent ruling party, it was hard to make a difference between government job or campaign job. For example, Prime Minister flying all around the country, and so it is with he's doing it as a Prime Minister, or is he's doing it as the head of the ruling party, etc. For smaller party, it turned out it's very important to be more mature. It took 4 to 5 elections, and plus it requires the leadership integrity of the leaders of political party, and it is strong confidence in their theory, in the concept of philosophy of this political party, which are still to be formed for smaller political parties.
So what about the independent candidates? There were many independent candidates that has really high education and, in big businesses.
It turned out for independent candidates, it's almost no chance, because out of all independent 121 person, only one person had won, and that person was the ex-prime minister of the country, Altan Hoyak. So more and more it is become more clear that whoever and how many ever independent candidates come, they have a very little chance to be elected within the system of election that they have chosen this time.
So what can the Democratic Party do in the next election to win at least half of the seats?
Well, they have a long agenda, I think. First of all, Mr. Erden was not elected. That means his leadership is very much lacking. That's why he had resigned, announced the resignation. And the other also heads of the other coalition also have resigned. Why? Because Democratic Party is to be democratic inside, at least first, and they should be wholly responsible for the actions that they have been doing a lot wrong. In particular, some their former leaders were supporting that group of oligarch group which had tried to take over everything in the country, including that 49% of the internet and other large industrial assets in the country and the large deposits licenses. And this group were supported. This group, head of the group is Mr. Irton Bileg, the owner of the Trade and Development Bank. And this group was, according to the People's Party representatives and heads, this group had a lot of money. They put a lot of candidates to this last election, and many of their actions were supported by former leaders of the Democratic Party. So they need to make inside very clear about their vision, mission, and most importantly, the principles that makes democracy in Mongolia stronger, not weaker. So Democratic Party has to do internally substantially reform inside. And plus, Democratic Party, if possible, to involve or to get consolidated to consolidate all the smaller political parties. And it looks like Mongolia down the road will have only two major political strong systems that can be opponent to each other.
So what can we expect from the current parliament? So Mongolian People's Party got elected the second term, so what can we expect?
Well, first of all, they need to meet a lot of challenges from tomorrow. This is a foreign debt issue, also domestic debt, big expected deficit of budget, and at the same time to fight having dollar and tugrik ratio more or less stable. So a lot of challenges are waiting for them.
Okay, thank you for that. So let's get into our third topic for today. There have been many complaints made about the results of the 2020 parliamentary elections because a number of votes were lost in highly competitive electoral districts. So our first question on this topic is that this year's electoral district were expanded. They had 2 to 3 seats in each electoral district. So did this election prove that this system is flawed, or at least wouldn't work in Mongolian environment?
Well, there are 3 groups of electoral system or election system in the world. If by bigger group, one is proportional, the other is majoritarian, the third is it's mixture of these 2 systems. Mongolia have tried all of them for last 8 election, and the last one we have just checked is a larger district with 2 or 3 seats. We call it also mandates, enlarged constituencies. We tried a smaller one or smaller district with 1 candidate or 1 seat in the year 1996, 2000, 2004, 2016. And we have used the mixed one only once in 2012, where the Democrats got majority seats. That was the mix is 26 districts with 48 seats, and then 28 were distributed by political parties with not open names of candidates from each political parties. So it is closed system. And this time it shows the current system again shows that that the system is working for only large political parties. That's the reason why the People's Party, when they are in majority in parliament, have chosen that system. And that system is working for only large political parties that have many members. According to Supreme Court registration, People's Party has 160,000 members, and Democratic Party has 150,000 members. That's one of the reasons why the smaller party could not win.
So you mentioned the three electoral systems. So which one is most suitable for Mongolia and which doesn't give advantage to one party or another?
Mongolia had tried all of them, as I said. For example, let's say it depends on, in particular, mixed system. It depends on where mixed system is the system where the political parties are also voted, and with the open name, for example, would be much better. If the name of, say, each political party puts the list of candidates they will put in from up, the majority will be elected. However, it was not the case. It was closed system last time. That's why Constitutional Court had decided it was a violating constitutions, because in the constitutions a person is to have a right to be elect or to be elected. But that time we were electing political parties. So it found unconstitutional. That's one of the reasons why in 2016 the Democratic Party at that time had selected the other way last time. Well, what is suitable for Mongolia? It depends on how mature is a political party as institutions. Unfortunately, they are not yet mature because both political parties have lacking a lot transparency inside, in particular financing of political campaign and the system itself, political party itself. And plus they don't have much clear shared concept of the political theory, and a particular Democratic Party has a leadership issue. If the last election was proportional system, say, then the completely different picture we could have it by this time. What I mean is, People's Party got 45% of voters' support, and they're supposed to have, if it's proportional, 45% of the seats, or 34 seats, not 62 as it is now. 62 is 82% of votes. Seats. So having 45% of voters support, you have 85%, 82% of the seats. That sounds, by this system, quite unfair. If it was a proportional system, People's Party would have only 34 seats. Democratic Party would have 19 seats. Then our coalition, that's the name of one of the coalitions, 6 seats. New coalition would have 4 seats, and a right person electorate coalition will have 4 seats. If it is the case, then People's Party have only 34 seats. The remaining, 42 will be to other political parties. In that case, they could have own coalition, and they could make own cabinet. So the political system or the governance in this country could be completely different should it have chosen proportional system, for example. So a lot of research to be made to make clear that to finding the right system for Mongolia.
So before every election, the party in power changes the election law for to be more favorable for them. So it's not really fair. What can we do in the future to make this more fair for every candidate?
Exactly. That's the problem of Mongolia. How you can change the system of game or the rule of game before the game every time. 6 times or 7 times they did it, and yet the people are very tolerant. And they did it last time again. Within even 6 months, they changed the game, the rule of the game or election system. So first of all, we should stop this changing of the system. We should have a fixed one that is working for every elections. But however, for that, if we have a mixed system or proportional system, then it's a matter of population dissemination or the density of Mongolia, because some administrative unit has a very non-significant amount of population in terms of political power, and then they have a more chance to have a representative by very small, maybe 10 times in certain cases, representative than the larger constituency. So we need to make first, for that administrative unit of the country to be fixed and stay there stable. Then we have this system more chance to have the stable election system first. Secondly, we need to have very transparent system of political parties financing. For that, the fourth thing we should do it, we should abolish the Central Election Commission. Instead, we must have Central Electoral Commission, where the political parties are represented just half, the another half to be represented by civic society, by citizens, by people that is recognized, who is non-political, maybe famous, somebody who everybody knows. And by the way, that system is working in England, and that Electoral Commission in England, Central Electoral Commission in England, is responsible for informing the audience, the voters, about the political party financing as it is the new money comes, say above certain amount of money comes to the account of political parties that demand the explanation of that origin of the money to them, to their electoral committee, which in its own turn announces it on website that this political party got that amount of money from that person or company for that and this purpose. So that's what we are missing, and I think this irregularity that made the recounting of votes could be avoided if the election accounting system, automatic system, then converting into Excel and to the TV screen, could be controlled with more civic participation or ordinary voters' participation. So I think this new electoral commission could solve many problems at once in Mongolia.
So is it possible for Mongolia to have this kind of fixed system with the current laws in effect?
At least we should try, but the major hindrance there will be the smaller administrative unit of Somong, etc. Because mixed one requires certain smaller districts with one vote. So the politicians tend to have that to their own favor when they arrange the size of district of vote.
Unfortunately, that is all the time we had for today.
We would like to announce that for July month, Jargal Defacto review will be off, and from August 1st, maybe we will find a right format to reach you. Maybe it can be in social format, social media format, or on this TV format. Anyway, thank you very much for your attention and being with us for all these years. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a nice weekend and goodbye.